Welcome to another chapter of Journey of Hope. Thrilling stories of people who have confronted a traumatic injury, a medical crisis, or some other type of traumatic injury that has resulted in them coming to Loma University Medical Center. And they've been impacted by the Ministry of Healing here at Loma and have gone on to experience hope and happiness and wholeness. Our guest today is Mike Bellender from Redlands, California. And Mike has a story to tell of a terrible assault, an attempted robbery, and really attempted murder that he was involved in, and how it made an impact upon his life, and how he recovered, and now how he's involved in a ministry. Mike, it's so good to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me.
And I understand you were born here in San Bernardino and lived here all of your life?
Most of it. Part of it was up in Fresno, and then we moved back down to the San Bernardino Valley.
And you're married and have some children?
Three children.
And some grandchildren?
2 grandchildren and 1 grandson on the way. The first 2 grandchildren are daughters, or girls, and the grandson is expected in January of 2008.
Oh, well, good enough.
Yeah,
congratulations.
It's awesome.
There's nothing like grandkids.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, I'm visiting with you over the last few months and getting acquainted with you. I know you were involved in this terrible accident, for lack of a better term. People hear the word war and terrorism and murder and violence and hostility and assault and rape and beating and bloodshed and slaughter and massacre. These are powerful words that bring about an emotive effect in the people that hear them. But you yourself was involved in a terrible assault just about 10 years ago. And why don't you tell us, tell the audience, we got people from around the world that are watching this story, and tell us your story. I know that you had a business of your own, and you had a couple of different jobs, and working 16, 18 hours a week, and you had a week, a day, and just really kind of running a rat race like so many people do today. And then some things happened, and one of them happened to be this terrible event. Tell us what happened about 10 years ago.
Okay.
Try to reconstruct the story.
Okay. First of all, thank you, Lynn, for the opportunity to share this. Like I tell people, it's not my story. It's God's story, and I'm telling it for Him.
And I need to bring out here to the audience so they understand who you are. Mike, I know you're a very dedicated, committed Christian. You're very active in the Catholic Church. And as I was reading some of the background and getting acquainted with you, you even actually studied for the priesthood while you were in high school, but then you kind of told me that girls kind of came along.
Exactly.
And you kind of moved in a different direction. And,
exactly.
You went on to college and graduated. And anyway, you were working, and tell us what happened.
Well, I had a printing business with my father-in-law, and in the early 90s, we had a recession. And when you're a father that loves his wife and his children, you do whatever you have to do to make ends meet. So I would work the printing business during the day, and I found a job working for Comcast, selling cable at night throughout the San Bernardino area.
Were you traveling or just working out of the office?
Well, I was actually going door to door.
Were you?
At night, and
as a salesperson.
As a salesperson, and this was after 8 hours in the printing industry, in the printing business. That I'd be working there for the first 8 hours of the day, and then after that, I'd kiss my wife goodbye because she was in the business with me, and she'd ride home with her dad, and I'd go out in the field and sell. And we originally thought that this would go on maybe for about 1 year.
Just trying to get ahead.
Just to get ahead and keep
established.
And established. Well, 1 year became 2, and et cetera, and finally in the 4th year, I was putting in 16 to 17, 18-hour days, 5 days a week, plus an additional 10 hours a day on Saturday. But I always left Sunday. There was no way I was going to work on Sunday. I made that my family time.
That was your family time.
And my time for God.
And time for God, okay.
But at the end of 4 years, I was so close to burnout, and I kept praying. I said, Lord, something's got to break, something's got to give. And little did I know what God had in store for me, because all 1,300 days that preceded this particular event were the same as every other day. We live in Redlands. We actually passed Loma Linda on the way into the printing business, Loma Linda Medical Center, and we also passed a mortuary or a cemetery down the way. And it always seemed to call me to kind of reflect on my life. But
when you're driving by.
As I was driving by, but I always thought, oh, I'm not going to die for a long time. And so I would work the printing business, like I say, in the morning and go sell at night. And on March 21st, 1996, the day started out no differently than all the rest. And about 5 minutes or 10 minutes to 11, I called my wife to let her know I was coming home.
Now, this is in the
night. This is at night.
11 o'clock at night.
Calling from the Comcast headquarters out in Ontario. And she had proceeded to tell me that she had taken the kids out to get something to eat because there wasn't much food in the refrigerator. And I said, that's fine, I'll just grab a bite to eat on the way home. And so I go downstairs and meet the last customer service rep, who's a woman. And I always got in the habit of walking them out to their cars and making sure that they got out.
Kind of closing up.
As we were closing up. And this particular night, our normal procedure was I go outside first, and then the last woman sets the alarm, and she has 30 seconds to exit the building.
So just two of you in the building?
Just the two of us at this point. And I went to open the door as I normally do, but the door just whooshed out of my hands, and before I knew it, 5 ski mask men were on top of us.
Really?
My first thought was, this is a joke. These things
don't happen.
These things don't happen to me. But that feeling only lasted maybe a second, because as soon as the first man came in, he grabbed my throat, pushed me against the wall, and all my sales materials spewed throughout the floor.
So you had stuff in your arms.
I had stuff in my arms. And he squeezed my throat. And the fear level, I tell people that the adrenaline of fear at that point
just took over.
And it felt like a rocket of fear that just went through my body. And
so this just a second or two after
exactly.
you encountered them, it was no longer a joke, very serious. They're manhandling you.
Exactly.
And 5 of them.
5 of them. And he's got his hand around my throat, and I'm looking down the barrel of his gun. And the only thing I could think of to say at that moment was, please don't shoot, I've got a wife and 3 kids. And he starts yelling profanities at me.
Did you actually say that?
I did say that. Somewhere the courage came out to say that.
Don't shoot me.
Please don't shoot, I've got a wife and 3 kids. And he starts yelling profanities at me and to shut up and to get down on the ground. And he ordered us to kneel with our hands behind our backs and with our noses touching the ground. And they started questioning us why there were 3 cars out in the parking lot and only 2 of us coming out of the door. And very shakily, I said, I drive the Volvo. And he kicks me in the face and pistol whips me. And he says, we know you drive the Volvo, you, and then all kinds of expletives. Then I made the mistake of saying what kind of car Carmen drove, because they did the same thing. They kicked me in the face even harder and pistol whipped me some more. I had double vision for a month afterwards.
Because of them
just because
beating you with the pistol and everything,
exactly.
kicking you.
Yeah.
My, oh my.
And then the next words out of his mouth.
Obviously they knew who you were. They'd been watching. They'd been casing the place.
Exactly.
Knew the cars you drove.
Exactly.
And so there was this 3rd vehicle out there, and they wanted to know
who else
that belonged to.
Who else was in the building.
Yeah.
And the next words, though, out of his mouth were words I thought I would never hear. And as cold as ice, he said, if there's anybody else in this building, you're a dead man. I'm going to kill you. And so at that point, he sent 2 of his men throughout the building.
Looking.
To search. And while they were gone, they duct taped our hands behind our back, and they duct taped our eyes.
So your hands are behind you, duct tape, and you can't see anything.
And I can't see anything. And my first impulse at that moment is to pray. And I prayed for forgiveness from God for my sins, because when I went to parochial school, I was always taught when you're near death,
active contrition.
Active contrition.
That's
yes,
right.
Yes. And as I'm saying this act of contrition, the most incredible thing happens. I get filled with the most incredible peace I have ever felt
As a result of your prayer
as a result
and
of my
reaching
prayer
out
and
to God.
reaching out to God.
See, God's
feel
always there, isn't
He
He?
is always there for us, whether we recognize it or not. And I was lucky enough to recognize it.
And you sense
I
sense
sensed
this
that peace.
In spite of the fact you've been beaten, I don't know if you're bleeding at this point, but you're down, and then what happened?
Well, the two men eventually came back empty-handed. And
you mean empty? They didn't
find anybody else in
Okay.
the building. And they got us up off the ground, and blindfolded, we lead them down the hall to where the warehouse is.
So you can't see where you're going.
Can't see where I'm going. I mean, they had at least duct taped my eyes 5 or 6 times, and I know my wife kind of laughs now and says, you know, she says, it took about a month to get the stickiness out of your hair. I think that's why I don't have as much hair today as I should have had. And so they, halfway down the hall, they asked us if there was any other alarms in the building. And neither one of us knew about a separate alarm that was in the warehouse. So we said, no, we don't think so. So we take a few more steps, and I say, okay, it's going to be the next door on the left. And they leave us
feeling your way and
feeling the way
can sense where you
and
are.
sensing where I am. And I said, there's going to be an open room here. There's going to be another room with an open window. And then on the other side of that is the warehouse. So they left us standing in this little room. They break in the next room through the open window. And I'm standing there with my hands duct taped behind my back, with my eyes blindfolded. And all of a sudden I hear this humming sound. And because my ears are partially duct taped, it sounded more like the hum of a truck. And I thought that they were loading up the converter boxes that they were there to steal.
But
it turned out that it was a loud alarm.
so alarm did go off.
An alarm did go off.
They triggered an alarm.
They triggered an alarm.
Okay.
And the next thing I know, I hear the patter of feet, I hear commotion, and the next thing, I hear the blast that just vibrates the entire room. I feel a warm sensation go through my back.
They shot you.
They shot me. My left leg went entirely
So
numb.
you apparently they ran by, and they must have thought that you lied to them about the alarm.
That's what we suppose
Happened.
was the case.
And out of anger, they fired one shot at you.
And shot one shot. And as I'm falling to this ground, this peace is so incredible that 3 words shoot out of my mouth just as fast as the bullet that went into my back. And there's no way on God's green earth that I can take credit for thinking to say these 3 words. It had to come from that spirit of peace that was within me. And those 3 words were, I forgive you.
And you said it out audibly.
I said it out loud. And as I
you're
hit
shot and as you're
falling to the ground.
Oh, Mike, that's incredible.
And like I say, it wasn't me though. It wasn't me. That
Well,
had to be the
couldn't have
Holy
been. The Lord had control of you. And he gave you
yeah.
that sense when you were in the other room.
Exactly.
Prayed, and he was there with you.
Exactly.
So then what happened? I mean,
Well, I fell to the ground, and I'm thinking, did I say I forgive you? And I'm not sure who was more stunned, myself or the gunman. And it may have even saved my life. He may have even taken a second shot
and finished you off.
and finished me off. The woman that I was with had managed to escape and hide across the hall, so she was unharmed.
Oh, that's good.
And so eventually I hear the police come. And at first I'm kind of reluctant they call out, is there anybody here? And I'm kind of reluctant to say yes, because I thought it might have been
still been them.
Them to finish me off. But then I heard the police radio, so I yelled out, help me, I've been shot. And I can still remember the face of the policeman to this day that unwrapped the duct tape. And I said, I can kiss you, but I'm not that kind of a guy.
So, but you're shot at this point in the back.
In the back.
So they apparently called an ambulance?
They called in paramedics, and I was taken to Loma Medical Center.
Okay.
And I truly believe, Lynn, that I couldn't have had a better place to go than Loma Medical Center. Originally, the doctors in the emergency room didn't think I would ever walk again.
Really?
The bullet was so close to the center of the spine It was less than the width of my small finger away from the center of the spine. And so they didn't think that they weren't going to do anything
no
with
promises,
the bullet.
yeah.
Yeah,
They were going to leave the bullet there.
They were going to leave the bullet there.
Yeah. Well, I know in visiting with you, apparently one of the doctors asked you, are you allergic to anything? And what did you say?
I said, yes, I'm allergic to bullets. I said, take it out.
And so you gave...
And this is part of the humor that God allowed me to have in spite of all this evil that had taken place.
Oh, this is an amazing story, Mike.
And like I say, I don't own it. God owns it.
So God had his hand over you.
Yes.
And you were shot, you were taken to the hospital, and you know, Loma Linda is it's the only level 1 shock trauma unit in the area. We have emergency critical cases coming in here all the time. You were brought in, and so they apparently operated.
Well, they operated the following morning.
Did they?
Yeah, and it wasn't until the head neurosurgeon, Dr. Yamada at the time, took a look at the MRIs and the CAT scans, and with my permission, and being allergic to bullets, he said,
Right.
I'll take it out then.
You had an allergy.
And I had an allergy.
Okay.
And so that's basically the story. And this joy and this peace, though, was contagious to other people, because my youngest daughter, who was 10 years old at the time, by the time she was 10, she had her principal at a parochial school shot by a disgruntled student.
This is the same time.
Within a year.
Yeah, within a year.
Within a year.
Within the time frame of this,
Yeah.
within a year. What
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
a terrible.
And she's gone on to be an AA plus student. She graduated from Redlands High School with a 4.6 GPA.
Oh, you got to be proud.
I am so proud of all 3 of my children.
Well, I noticed you shared a note here, and I'm going to share a portion of it. It's from your wife, Marilyn, that the following Thanksgiving, just a few months later, and I'm just going to share a personal part of this here. It says, "Dear Mike, what can I say to you this Thanksgiving? I'm so thankful that you're still here with me. When I think how differently that call could have turned out, I would not only be losing the man I most dearly love, but also the person who is my best friend. The person I want most in the world to share everything with. You are the person who cheers me when I'm down and makes everything that much more joyful in good times." So this had a tremendous impact upon you. And the word forgiveness is a ministry that you've been involved in. And it's ironic that, after you're shot, you utter these words, "I forgive you." And now, Mike, I know that in the last, that was 10 years ago, and the last 4 years, actually about 5 years ago, you began training to be a deacon in the Catholic Church. And I understand that's just not a little seminar that you go to.
No.
Tell me what all is involved.
Well, first of all, if my wife wasn't supportive of my decision, I could not have become a deacon, because they want the wife's support. Because they know that my time is going to be sometimes shared with her, but oftentimes away from her. And so they make sure that they have the full 100% support of each and every wife of the spouse that goes through the program.
And how long of a program are we talking about?
4 years.
4 years.
4 years, yeah.
4-year program. And then you were, just a year ago, in December, you were ordained as a deacon.
Exactly.
And we're going to take a look at some of the pictures now, and I want you to kind of lead us through them, because
Okay.
this is a remarkable experience where you were ordained as a deacon. We're going to look at some of the pictures,
Okay.
and you can just kind of comment on them as they come up on the screen. We'll just move from one to the next. Who do
Okay.
we have here?
Well, those are my 2 daughters. The one on the left is Colleen. She's a social worker and works with the developmentally disabled. And then Annie is my youngest. She won the Best Hair Award at Redlands High School, which I take great pride in because of the lack of hair that I have. And I couldn't have asked for 2 more loving daughters.
Great. We're going to just let the pictures
Okay.
roll, comment on them as we go
Okay.
through them.
These men in the white hats, there's a better word for it, but I can't think of it right now, and the red capes are the Knights of Columbus, and they line up as we proceed down the hall in the church for
And this
for
was the actual ordination that
Yeah.
we're looking at.
And this is me prior to the ordination, and We're in prayer at this point, along with the bishop of our diocese.
Okay.
This is the wives standing up, giving their consent. This is my wife, Marilyn, here.
Okay.
And this is a view as we come up to the front of the altar. There were 8 of us ordained in one class altogether.
So these are eight people that completed the 4-year program.
That completed the 4-year program.
Okay.
And
This is a big event, I can
This
see.
is a huge event. And that's our bishop there at the altar, and surrounded by other priests and other deacons for the celebration.
Okay.
And at this point, we go up and tell the bishop, we kneel in front of the bishop to let him know of our intent to serve the Catholic Church and to honor God and to do all things as servants of the Lord. And then the word deacon means to serve.
Sure.
This is the imposition of hands by the bishop.
Laying on of the hands.
Laying on of the hands to give me the Spirit, to fill me with the Spirit to be able to.
And I just want to make an observation, Mike. This was probably in recognition that God had already placed His Spirit on you because the Lord had been working through you. And what do we have here?
Well, it is such an emotional moment. And when you go through a program of the nature of the diaconate, you become great friends with everybody that you go through with.
On the same journey.
We're all on the same journey. We're all on the same page as far as our faith and our love for one another and our love for God. And this is before Mass begins, prior to or after the ordination had actually taken place. My wife is on the right, and they're decorating the altar, getting it ready for Mass.
Okay.
This is a picture of us after the service with our bishop and with the 8 deacons, and then there's also 2 temporary deacons there that went on to become priests.
Wow.
So.
Okay.
This is my wife and myself and probably our 2 closest friends. Daryl right now is a real inspiration because he has lung cancer and pulmonary fibrosis. And he's getting treatment at the Naval Hospital down in San Diego, so we keep him in our prayers.
Okay.
So this is my beloved family. I have been so blessed. You met my 2 daughters on the left. You met my wife. My son is to my left, and my daughter-in-law, and then my youngest granddaughter, and the oldest granddaughter, we didn't think she could take 2.5 hours being in the church all at once, so she was farmed out to her other grandparents.
Well, Mike, this had to be a thrilling high point in your experience and in your life, and being set aside for this important work of ministry. And you know, I showed up at a Mass recently where you were giving the homily, and I need to indicate I thought you did a great job.
Thank you.
And God has really gifted you and continuing to gift you. But what I think is so amazing, Mike, is 10 years ago you had this terrible accident. You uttered the words, "I forgive you," and now you're involved in a forgiveness ministry. And I saw one of the sermons that you had written and the notes, and hope was a 5-letter word. Yet hope is H-O-P-E, but the 5-letter word is what?
Jesus.
It's Jesus, J-E-S-U-S.
Yeah.
And now you've actually developed a ministry of forgiveness, I understand.
I go around, and this is my only way to give back to God the blessings that He has given to me. And I go around just like what I'm doing now.
Sharing the story.
Sharing the story. And I give it to youth, need to hear it. Even people in their 70s and 80s. I went to Plymouth Village over in Redlands, and the chaplain invited me over there to speak. And you don't think that people can change when they get to be that old. The chaplain called me excited the following Tuesday morning after I had spoken. And he says, "Mike," he says, "I want to let you know what happened." He says, one of your people from your congregation was really hesitant about coming. But I coaxed her, and he said, you should go support your deacon. You should, he's from your parish. Show up. So she showed up. Well, he called in, and he was so excited because the following day after hearing my talk, she went and called her daughter, whom she had not spoken to, in over 11 years.
Wow.
And
So your ministry is making an impact, and you're hearing some of these stories, but there are so many that you're not hearing about, that
Exactly.
people whose lives have been touched, and all because of the Lord working in your life and moving you to go on and prepare for the deaconate, and then to be ordained as a deacon. And now you're, and this isn't just once a month, we're talking about on a weekly basis. You're
Weekly.
involved and going around and you're preaching and you're sharing, and you have this ministry of forgiveness, and you're working in more than just one local church here, aren't you? You're preaching in some of the other churches.
Oh, yeah, I go to not just Catholic churches that I get invited to, but Lutheran churches, Episcopalian churches, Adventist, Seventh-day Adventist hospitals.
That's great.
And I just want to say one last thing about Loma Medical Center too, because all the staff, I truly felt like God had put me in God's own hands by each and every nurse, by each and every doctor. I couldn't have asked for a better set of angels taking care of me than the staff here.
We are
at Loma
so
Linda.
glad that you were able to be here, and that the Ministry of Healing made an impact upon your life, and now you in turn are involved in a ministry that reaches far beyond the immediate church that you're serving in. Mike, it's been a real blessing to have you here with us. I know you're working on a book called, what is it titled?
The Blessed Bullet.
The Blessed Bullet.
Yes.
And looking forward to having that come out. And again, want to thank you for sharing, and I know that God is going to continue blessing you and using you in your ministry. Want to thank you for joining us here on Journey of Hope. I'm Lynn Martell with Loma Linda University Medical Center, and we want to encourage our listeners to continue watching our program here. And for those that are watching, it's all over. We're through.
We're through.